everybody. Thank
Hi.
you guys for joining me. We are here to talk about Engel Völkers and how we fit into the wine industry and all the fun things that you guys are the best at in the business. Why wine properties? What keeps you in this space versus other kinds of real estate? What's the most interesting part of being in this business?
Well, I started right after 9/11, 2001, doing real estate. And as much as I love residential properties, I got my MBA in 98, I guess, in Arizona. And I just needed a little bit more diversity and challenge. And I love the business components that go into selling wineries and vineyards. It's a little less emotional in general than residential
it can
properties.
Be, it cannot be
exactly.
also.
In general. But I love the complexity of it, and partnering up with Will, he has such an amazing commercial background that we had very complementary skills, so it's been fun to get involved with the business aspect of it.
I would kind of buttress those sentiments as well. I think the level of sophistication of a transaction dealing with a vineyard or winery is much more complex, and again, with the legal background, that has been excellent in terms of understanding lot line adjustments or interpreting surveys, et cetera, and looking at soil and water and all these technical components that, while the anatomy of a residential transaction is beautiful and exciting for new homeowners, et cetera, this is just sort of a different animal and much more exciting intellectually. So I think I was naturally drawn to that, I think, as we all were.
It keeps you interested on a deeper level, and the problems are bigger, but the solutions are more interesting to these problems. And there's not a problem-free property out there, especially in the wine industry. So being able to identify those problems and figuring out the solve for it to benefit your client has been the most interesting part of it for me.
And then the inconsistency of farming versus residential, right? So above the ground, below the ground. I love the romance of it all. I love the fact that there are 15 to 20 people that have to touch that from vine to bottle. I love the story. I love the seasonality of the weather part, so every single year is completely different. And I think when Will and I worked with the Hartford group that one time, they were like, well, it's the wine country. It should be great. I said, well, it's actually farming. It's agriculture. It's hard.
Yeah.
It's not easy. So all the things you have to go through, the farmer has to go through every season, and no two are the same. There's so much that goes into it.
People don't get into this business because they're trying to make a lot of money. It's because they really, truly love this place. They love the business, they love the people, they like the artfulness of making wine, and it's the most beautiful place in the world. So, but it is not a large money-making proposition for most people.
No, and I'm glad I went last in this, because every point that you guys made, I think, is spot on. It's the complexity of our wine business. The economics are challenging now, but it is a combination of a lifestyle, right? This is a very specific destination in so many different ways, from food to wine to luxury residential. And I have chosen to specialize in this sort of just out of happenstance. My passion's always been into the commercial and agricultural, and being here and my family involved in the wine industry, I didn't realize I could specialize to the degree I am, and it's been super fortunate to have Pavi help me with the residential, because as you point out, and all of you point out, we have this element of commercial agricultural layered in with lifestyle. And honestly, I'm not the best lifestyle broker out there, but you're one of the best, and you guys are one of the best. And so, what we share together, I think, is really helpful, and it's a really special place to do real estate.
What are you guys seeing in the vineyard and winery property market right now? Who are the buyers? Who are the sellers? What are you guys hearing from your clients?
I think that there's vineyards that were certainly priced at a premium, even just a few years ago, and they were sort of off-market confidential properties, and now they've, all of a sudden come to light at a much steeper price, in public sales. So we're seeing some of that. I think the nuance that we all bring to the table is really connecting the dots between a specific vineyard, whether it's adjacent owners or somebody that has been eyeing it for a long time. And I think, you know, the follow-up and the connectivity of that is really what's most important, and bridging that gap, you know, between, you know, it could be a very sophisticated Silicon Valley person or a, you know, international entertainment, you know, guru, and that sort of person doesn't have his finger on the pulse of wine country real estate, but we say, hey, this is available now, you should acquire it. And so it's those type of, you know, light bulb moments that I think all of us here have had, you know, in the past several years.
You do need to connect with a local professional because, again, the timing part is pretty rare, and there's a great opportunity now. And I work more on the smaller side, so anywhere between 3 and maybe 20 acres. If it's over that, that's not typically something I see a whole lot. So the calls I am getting are from people that are lifestyle, that have been coming here, that are maturing to an age where they want to slow down, but they do like the aspect of farming. And so, like you said, connecting now before we make the full shift and we go back into another 15, 20-year run, which is what we're coming out of now. You know, timing's everything.
I agree with that. I think you asked where the buyer's coming from. I think it's, and you alluded to this, Suzanne, a lot of the trades that we're seeing right now are opportunistic trades from industry folks. We saw Opus made a big purchase in Oakville of the Stanton Vineyard, and Dominus made the purchase of the Markham Vineyard. Those are just expansion of their own existing estate footprints, which is important for that long-term approach to the more of the commercial side of the business. And you know, probably 15 years ago, there was a lot less focus on, are we going to make money on this? It's not a big deal. We just don't want to lose money. And now we're in one of those cycles where we've got too much supply, not enough demand, and we're going through that kind of Econ 101 thing where the market needs to adjust. I mean, we all have clients that are doing very, very well in this market. Generally, if you've got solid direct-to-consumer relationships, you're doing much better than if you're battling with Constellation over shelf space and Safeway. So it's a really dynamic market, but you're right, this is not a forever thing.
If you can hang on for a few years and expect to not make a bunch of money, I think it's a fabulous time to buy right now. And I think that there's a lot of people that, you know, after we've had these bumper harvests where estimates were, you know, way low on what actually people ended up bringing in fruit-wise, I think that there's some really great times ahead of us, and I think it's an exciting time to be shopping for a vineyard. So I know that the vineyard industry pricing has changed, but I still truly believe that the vineyards in those core super high-end cult, you know, AVAs are still selling at pretty much the same value per acre. I'd say Pritchard Hill falls into that. Oakville, Rutherford Bench, you know, those areas. So we've seen kind of part of the market start to disintegrate a little bit, fall away, but not that core part of the market. Has that been your experience as well?
100%. I mean, I've still got buyers that will call and are looking for Pritchard Hill, and there's nothing available except for the one winery up there. But a lot of them just want the pure vineyard investment. Same with Oakville. We haven't seen a Pritchard Hill transaction recently, but I think Opus paid over $750,000 an acre for that, the Stanton Vineyard, which I looked at, couldn't get the value on that, but I think that's a pretty much going to be a complete replant of 30-something acres. But you're right, I mean, we've also got vineyards out in Pope Valley that we don't get calls on. So you've got this bifurcation in the market that's going on right now, and I think folks that are long-term players are looking strategically to upgrade their portfolio.
Yeah.
And right now, you know, below that A+, there's so much on the market that there's no sense of urgency. And I think they believe that this market's going to continue to go down, so why execute on the way down? They're going to, like everybody, they try to market, and they try to time the market at the bottom, which is probably going to be a mistake on their part. And I'm letting my buyer clients know that we're getting close enough that, you know, if you find something you like that fits into your portfolio, that you're not going to likely get another chance to buy it at this price per acre again.
Right. Or someone else is going to buy it before you have a second go at it.
Or you wait till we got out of the bottom, and then now we're competing with 6 other buyers for the same thing that you could have maybe paid $10,000 more or less per acre, but that becomes a rounding error as you go through the life cycle of this vineyard.
You could have negotiated one-on-one rather than me competing with your deeper interest than mine. And that's
100%.
It's not a fun way to spend money.
No, no.
I see an alternative apart from these strategic sort of high-level corporate in that sort of people in the Bay Area, they don't want to drive so deep into the valley. So
The lower end of the valley is
I've
becoming
seen a
more
lot
attractive.
of movement like Coombsville through Carneros. Coombsville was kind of trendy for a few years. There's interesting and beautiful vineyards out there as well. And I have had a lot of clients come through that say, I don't want to drive more than an hour and 10 minutes, and I have my own vineyard and I'm in wine country already, and also proximity, to the hottest restaurants, to all that. So I see that also kind of permeating in this kind of the southern corridor of Napa.
Well, Stanley Ranch is a good example of that. It's a beautiful bearish property at the southern end of the valley, and it got built because they annexed into the city of Napa to get water and all of that. And guess what? They're booked out solid.
And that's the southern gateway to Napa Valley.
It absolutely is.
Closest to
We're
where it
a
is.
bike path away from it, and we have seen a tremendous uptick in our tasting room numbers because of Stanley Ranch. We make some wine for them. We custom crush things for them and put their label on it, and it's been wonderful for Carneros as a region, which has kind of always been a little bit cowboy and a little bit like on the fringe, but it's now we have 2 5-star resorts in Carneros region, and that was always like this cool region. Well, guess what? As everything's gotten hotter, that's actually the nice place to be when it's 105 at Valley.
Right.
So we've seen a healthy shift, I think, south. Some of the land is not as desirable to plant in, but God, it's beautiful and it's a special place. The functionality of certain wineries and their permitting, and us knowing what wineries are capable of making what kinds of wines because their permit dictates that. Our permit is an old permit. We have a lot of flexibility in where we bring fruit in, but newer permits do not have that. And it's definitely the county is very heavy-handed in trying to determine where this fruit comes from that makes the wines in Napa County.
Well, and that's one of the cultural things that people don't understand when they come here. Napa Valley generally, back in the 60s, was turned into an ag preserve, essentially. And so the way they dictate the wine permits now, the post-WDO, is 75% of the fruit has to come from the valley. And they really don't want you to sell a whole lot of wine at the winery. They want to restrict that. They want to move that commercial thing to downtown Napa. So as you file for your permit or your modification to your permit, you go into the county and you arm wrestle over, are you going to be allowed 10 visitors a week or 40 visitors a week? And you have to make the case, and how is that going to affect your neighbors and traffic and so forth. And so,
and how's your wastewater system functioning?
And I find folks who want to come here and be in the wine business, that's the one thing that they really struggle with is dealing, because in a lot of jurisdictions outside of Napa, you can pretty much do whatever you want, right?
There's a reason that large-scale producers here, like Camus, built a winery in Suzanne.
Yep.
Right.
They could bring in fruit from anywhere there. They had no restrictions.
I think the county I hope their local leaders are waking up and stepping up and understanding that local businesses, small family-owned wineries
Are being hurt by this.
are hurting.
Yeah.
It's interesting that I'm helping a client through the micro winery process, which is a new kind of avenue to be able to make wine on the property in a more boutique sort of garagiste style. And even so, it's still a complex navigating that. And I think, again, going back to our core advisors and experts in our company, we're able to either resolve or resolve the problem for them or tell them who to go to. And I think that's been a really important component of selling vineyards and country properties.
I try to explain that the scarcity part. I mean, you talk about the ag preserve, we talk about the size of our valley, what's plantable, what's available versus other markets. And we talk about Stanley Ranch, that's an anomaly. The fact that that's in the city, that you couldn't have said, okay, I have an idea, let's just take this county property and make it city. It was an anomaly. They had water, which they got to get from a very unique source. That was very unique. Carneros Inn and Lodge, which is also very unique. That was
a mobile home permit.
Yeah, that was a mobile home permit. And now, of course, it's it's a great destination. But there's a scarcity part of that. You know, this 10 acres is not the same as
That 10
this
acres,
shape.
yeah.
10 acres, your aspect, your orientation, where is your house? I don't want to pay $700 a square foot for 3,500 square feet of house that I don't like. But then we have to discuss, of course, all the components of the land. But then we have to figure out what the value of the vines are, and which is always a discussion, right? I can picture your spreadsheet right now. And I'm like, no, let's turn this, let's turn this, let's turn
Yes,
this.
we've seen those.
When wine producers can buy their grapes at half of what they were buying for 2 years ago, that's a significant way for us to bring prices down and make us more accessible to younger generation that hasn't typically been drinking wine. And we need to be accessible to people that are in their 20s. And $125 bottles of Cabernet is really hard to make that happen.
So, and we see the industry already responding. I mean, I know Stephanie Honig's working on her own alcohol-free brand. There's a couple other. I know Aaron Potts doing that.
Well, they're working together.
They're working together. I love that the wineries are all doing non-alcoholic tasting menus and you know, mocktail tastings and things like that, so that the driver of the day or somebody that wants to join in but doesn't drink.
You're seeing it on restaurant menus. Like we've never
Absolutely.
seen it before. I mean, I even think 5 years ago.
When you talk about non-alcoholic or having it served in a can at a festival, how would you adapt then as an industry to the consumer? How do we relate to a 22-year-old, 25-year-old who? I would love it to go to a concert and be able to have a glass of wine, but
A Napa glass of wine.
A Napa glass of wine,
Which
absolutely.
sometimes can be hard to find in those sort of festivals.
And it's a great time now to invest because the food is more affordable, it's more approachable.
I would say that I think people also, like when they come into this industry and they love the romance of it and they buy a vineyard and they hire a winemaker and they start making their own wine, what are they probably surprised by? I would say how hard it is to sell wine.
Yes. It's not all frolicking through the
It's
vineyards.
always not profit.
However, it's not just growing the grapes.
And it's multi-year investment before you see $1.
Yes.
Well, that's very true.
Yeah, your horizon's very different.
Yes.
And the hardest thing in this valley to be successful with is selling wine. There's a lot of 95-point wines stacked in warehouses right now, made by some awesome winemakers. So
Yes.
But the fundamentals don't change, right? I mean, Napa is still the blue chip, and
100%.
We're the best, yes.
And we have great proximity to other wine regions, but they're very, very different. I mean, our geography and our geology and the limitation that we set in place with regard to our zoning and our plans have held that to create scarcity, but also try to, with the farmers, maintain the suitability of the soil.
And uphold the value.
High quality.
And they do that amazingly so.
I also think, environment has a lot to do with this. Our environment has changed pretty significantly. My family has always grown Burgundian varietals down in the Carneros region, as Suzanne's family has been. And we have decided, we have pulled out our vineyard and we are replanting currently, and we have decided that it's not really necessarily the best place to grow Pinot Noir. So we're doing a lot of other, varietals that are maybe hard to find in the valley that we'll use our own in our own productions, but we'll also sell to other people that are going to be looking for certain varietals that are hard to find.
Same thing, our family, Truchard Vineyards, has diversified its vineyards over the years for a variety of reasons, because he recognized the warmer climate coming in Upper Carneros. So people say Carneros Cabernet, how is that possible? Well, it is possible because we get the Brix levels, which are the sugar levels, and we have the soil, we have a slightly higher elevation, and I think that it's good to diversify in terms of grape varieties, but even in terms of other industries that will buttress the wine industry, and we've looked at that in terms of health and wellness spaces and things like that are trying to kind of make their footprint in the valley. But to your point about the narrative that's coming out, it drives me absolutely crazy.
Yeah. It's very unfair.
And I think that as real estate leaders and experts, I've even toyed with writing an editorial of taking back the narrative, because certain people just have not done that.
You should write something and put it in the Chronicle.
And because I look at this valley and I say it's so beautiful. We are okay. Yes, it's not. It's a difficult time at the moment, but you know, we're busy in the tasting room. I see downtown Napa bustling. You know, I see the restaurants busy. So I think that it's time to take back the narrative, if you will.
And just this week, I'm seeing way more folks visiting the valley. Than
Absolutely,
we've seen.
harvest is a beautiful time.
But I think back to the real estate component, we're a big family of California wine, right? And not all wine regions are the same. And I think, you know, there is a definite hierarchy, and Napa is definitely at the high end of that. And in my view, the investors that are coming here want to know that there's a base level of real estate value, and so it's like, what is going to have to happen? And we see our valley making adjustments. But if you go into the Central Valley, there's like 75 or 80,000 acres of wine grapes that were taken out of production over the last 18 months.
Yeah.
That's significant. So what's going to happen is we're going to have to produce a more affordable Cabernet Sauvignon, for instance. I mean, it's hard to find a Napa Cab at $60 a bottle anymore.
It's too expensive to produce.
But I think the consumer ultimately will be better off, because now they're not going to be buying it from Lodi. And Lodi is a great wine growing region, but they're going to be able to get a higher quality wine in Napa when the dust settles and we figure out how to rejigger what we're growing
retool
here.
our pricing and that sort of thing.
The amount of conversations that you have to have with your buyer or your seller, your seller probably knows, but your buyer really needs to know, because again, you know, governmentally there are issues, permit-wise there are issues, visitations there are issues.
Of course, and if you buy a house in the wrong neighborhood, you can always sell it, and it's not that big of a problem. If you buy a winery with a vineyard and a house, and you've got complicated entitlements and wine licensing, that could be a really big problem.
It's hard to get out of. It's hard to
operational
unravel.
Oh yeah.
things to consider, absolutely.
Right.
And obviously we'd like to sell in-house because we know that we're dealing with professionals that have the experience to help guide their clients through these problematic. And there's not as I said before, there's not a problem-free property out there. There's something that needs to be overcome in every single deal.
As much as it's what is said, it's who says it, right? I can trust who I'm talking to and go, okay, great. You've heard what I had to say, you've digested it, you're gonna go ahead and transfer it to your client in a way that they're gonna understand that I don't have to revisit this again, which is important.
Yeah, and I think all of us have very specialized networks of who to call to solve these problems, and I think that's a huge value add for all of us.
Definitely.
Very
And
different,
you know, whether it's somebody, like as I said, to help find water on a property, well driller, you know, the best wine attorneys in the world are here, and they're here and they're in the business for a reason. They are needed. There's a lot of complex governmental issues, you know, and us knowing who to call to help solve these problems is why we're good at our jobs. Knowing who to call for every little thing that comes up that your client needs. I mean, I can't tell you how many times the clients called me 5 years later and said, hey, I literally cannot think of who, you know, drilled our well, and we're having some issues, and can you remember, you know, and I'm like, I'll call them for you and I'll get them out on your property.
I feel like our business, we can get deep into the issues before our clients have to start writing checks to an attorney.
We save our clients a tremendous amount of money.
And time.
And time. I think time is as important to our clients as money is these days, right?
I spent a year on the phone with a client. And I wasn't quite sure that he was ever really gonna buy, because I knew he had the money. It wasn't that, it was more, is he going to really commit to here? Because he was coming from New York, and he was my very first big deal 20 years ago. And he is still an extremely good friend. And he came into it looking for a house. There was not a mention of vines, but I helped him build his vineyard with the right vineyard managers and the right designers and, you know, all of that, and found him label designers, and, you know, now I'm trying to find someone to help him sell wine.
You know, how do you help figure out where people want to go? I think it's a lot of asking questions up front, and sometimes they'll tell you one thing, and because of our experience and our knowledge of the valley, you're like, I know exactly what they want, but they don't even know that that's what they want yet. And then you start showing them properties, for example, and they
You gotta waste some time for a little while.
they didn't realize what they wanted was really over here, or, you know, but you can, if you're able to read people and really listen to what they're saying, I feel like we all have enough experience or knowledge of what exists out there.
You know, when you give out a name, here's someone who can solve your problem, it's 100% vetted.
Yeah.
And out of respect for the person I'm sharing with my client, they don't want me sending someone to them who's not
100%.
a good fit,
That's
right?
a great point.
So, you know, that you're saving me a ton of time, money, but I'm also giving you the expert. And so it's a relationship that,
100%.
so I can't say enough about who it is you can call. I mean, we'll be on property and I'll be like, John, I need this. What are we looking at here? Don't call me, call this person.
And I think, again, you think about people that live, breathe, and sleep the wine industry. We're up at 5 a.m. at harvest, you know, looking at everything, walking through the vines, understanding every component of the wine industry, and again, bringing that, you know, to the relationships. And I was thinking about a transaction they did. So I started a tasting group, like a kind of a supper club, rotating and just sitting at the table. So a GM of a winery said, you know, my boss is looking for a vineyard. We went the next day, Armstrong Ranch in Calistoga, all cash deal. And it was just like, again, finding those dots to connect. That's unlike any other brokerage that I've seen.
That's why we're here.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have to be in place. You have to be out there daily farming it.
Yeah.
It's not a 9 to 5, that's for sure.
It's a beautiful industry that does help one another, as we've seen, you know, in you know, the fires and other earthquakes and
need.
everything. We've been through it all. So I think that's one of the really unique parts of the wine and vineyards.
How do you balance protecting local culture and welcoming new types of owners?
I have these lovely clients that are Venezuelan, and they were enamored with the wine industry. They come from the entertainment industry, and you know, I sold them 2 beautiful adjacent parcels. And you know, of course, as happens many times with clients, they become friends and you get to know them. And they said, you know, Suzanne, can you please, what do we do? And I think it's a matter of integrating people into the culture in a thoughtful way, in a diplomatic way, because we are a growing society. You know, we're not a bubble. And I think that it's important to diversify the wine industry even as a whole. You know, there's not a lot of minority-owned wineries, and I think that that's, you know, something to consider when, in terms of outreach to clients, reaching out to Hispanic buyers, to Asian buyers, et cetera. And I think that that's actually an opportunity for us.
Yeah, I think that our nonprofits and trade associations do a lot of that legwork, you know, and I think our job is to introduce our clients that are new to the Valley into those folds so that they get resources that help them. You know, the Napa Valley Grape Growers is a phenomenal organization that can offer you education all the way through, you know, selling your fruit, all of that. The Napa Valley Vintners, if you have a wine brand, can join, and it's a huge trade association that promotes Napa and your wines all over the world. But people don't know those exist if they're not in the industry or in the Valley necessarily.
Exactly.
And it's our job to introduce people to this and help them find where they fit in.
It is an ecosystem. I mean, when you come here and then you have to introduce them to what is most unique about our small community. And I think that our size really dictates that. When you look at our neighboring community, you go from Ocean to 2,500 foot elevation. You're going from Marin to Mendocino. There's many, many different climates, dirts that are all throughout that area. When you come to Napa, you're a little bit smaller, you're a little bit more intimate. It's 1 degree of separation. And so you can connect them. You can find a home here. You can find your community.
It's really cool to see how all the diverse ethnicities and stuff have come together, and then the general generosity of especially the affluent the wine families. I mean, Sutter Home, as you guys know, the Trinchero family built a $3 million football field for the public high school, and then the Cliff Bar folks built the track around it, and then Rudd did the Performing Arts Center.
The Gambles did the middle school.
It's a special place. I mean, from the farm workers to the C-suite guys to the owners, you know, it's a true community. And folks, it doesn't take long for folks when they step into our community to understand it's something special.
I think that's the culture that draws people to our valley.
100%.
And
The
so
warmth, yeah.
the warmth, the generosity, the culture, and so I think inherently those people are attracted to our community, and that's what's bringing them here to us.
So looking ahead 5 or 10 years, what changes do you see in the wine/real estate market in Napa County?
I think, you know, we're going through this sort of neo-prohibition era, where people are saying, oh, I'm not drinking wine. At the end of the day, I always say this, people have been drinking wine since the beginning of time. You know, as soon as they learned the fermentation and that
good it is.
sensation. So we're talking centuries. So I think it'll swing back, and I think that now is sort of the key opportunity and time to acquire, you know, that parcel if you're able to.
I would agree with that. I think I'm super positive on where Napa Valley is going to be in 5 years. I think, you know, 10 or 15 years ago, and some of us had clients like that came in who really weren't that disciplined, and they fell in love with the romance of having a big house on the hill, maybe in fire area or something, and with a vineyard that they really didn't have a plan for. And I think a lot of those folks who came 15 years ago, they're aging out. And so I just think that when you mix all that up, we're going to see a lot of turnover, and and the next buyers coming in, if they're getting good advice from us, they're going to be very disciplined in what they're buying because they know where they want to go, and we've helped them through the diligence process. And so we're going to see different values in real estate, and we're going to see, I think, a more disciplined objective in their purchase.
Yeah, far more clear.
Yeah.
Far more clear. I think that it comes full circle. I mean, I talk to some of the old timers, this is somewhat cyclical. I mean, you know, more things change, more they stay the same. The problems are different, the solutions are different. And I think that the experiential portion of it, I love going to a winery. I want to hear the story. I want to see how it is you're interacting with your vineyard. I want to see how you're maintaining. I want to see where you're making the wine. I want to see all that because that tells me what is actually in the bottle. So I think in the future, the idea of the rollover consumer, you know, because as some of those consumers that had historically been buying between 55 and 65 years old, they're aging out and changing. They're not drinking maybe as much, they're not spending as much, but then they are the newer consumers, the young consumers, and then they may very well want to go back and pair that with food, have that with music, and then we'd be reintroducing them to what the love affair was with wine.
And that's, I think, where a part of the evolution in the valley is going to go back to that deeper relationship, right? Is the proprietor inviting folks in, telling the story, taking them out to the vineyard, and connecting with the land, because wine's wine until there's a deeper connection. And I think that's Napa Valley provides that at such a high degree if that's what you want. And that's, I think, going to be the secret sauce going forward.
Thank you guys for joining today and talking about all of the wonderful aspects of our job that we get to do and how special Engel and Völkers advisors really are. And
this was really fun.
Yeah,
Thanks for putting this
fantastic.
together.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Cheers. Salud.
Cheers.